He poured ice-cold water over my head in front of a crowd, mocking me, humiliating me because I was a black man in a wheelchair sitting quietly beneath a statue. And behind his smirk was a badge, a loaded gun, and a system that had let him get away with it for years. I was supposed to roll away in silence, but that day I didn't. Because that splash didn't just soak my shirt, it reignited the fire in my soul. What followed shook an entire city, tore down a wall of corruption, and proved that even a man without legs can still stand for justice. He stood over me with a smirk that chilled the blood in my veins. "Get out of here, cripple," he sneered, then upturned the icy bottle of water in his hand, letting it pour down on my face, drenching my shirt, soaking my dignity, eroding whatever piece of humanity I thought I still had left. It wasn't just the water, it was the laughter from behind him, the snickers from nearby onlookers, the indifference in the air, and behind that uniformed face, that badge of law, was Officer Brent Dalton, clean-cut, sharp-jawed, with mirrored sunglasses and a gleaming name tag he wore like a trophy. He wasn't just a cop. He was a symbol of everything that had quietly tried to erase me from this town. And in that moment, as my wheelchair sank slightly into the hot, cracked pavement of Bridgeport's city square, I felt something I hadn't in years, burning fury. My name is Leonard Lenny Brooks. I'm a 63-year-old disabled black man, a Vietnam-era Army mechanic who lost the use of his legs not on the battlefield, but in the rusted guts of a Detroit steel plant years after I came home working double shifts so my boy wouldn't starve. I've lived in this same neighborhood on the south side of Bridgeport for nearly 40 years, in a modest corner unit of a crumbling apartment complex where every brick tells a story. I'm not loud. I'm not political. I don't wave signs or shout in protest. I pick up trash others walk past. I help the elderly get groceries when I can. I say sir and ma'am even when I'm ignored. I just want peace. But this wasn't peace. What happened that day wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a mistake. It was deliberate, ugly humiliation. My crime. Sitting quietly beneath the statue in the square with a handmade sign that read, "Freedom costs more than we admit." I wasn't blocking traffic. I wasn't panhandling. I wasn't causing trouble. But Officer Dalton saw me and decided that was enough. He called it loitering, though the city ordinance has no clause for sitting and thinking. He said I was disturbing public harmony, though the only thing disturbed was his gaze at my wheelchair. I could feel it, the discomfort, the disgust. I wasn't a person to him. I was a symbol of everything he thought wrong with this country, old, broken, forgotten black. But I wasn't always forgotten. There was a time when I stood tall in my army greens. A time when my boy Marcus used to say he wanted to be just like me. That was before the layoffs, before the stroke took my legs, before Marcus left town and stopped calling. Sometimes I wonder if he was ashamed of what I became. That day, as I rolled away from the square, dripping wet, a younger woman I didn't know came running after me. She had soft brown eyes, messy curls, and a fiery energy that reminded me of the marches in '68. "Sir, I saw what he did." That was wrong. "I filmed it," she said, holding up her phone. "You shouldn't let them do this." I didn't respond. I just kept rolling the wheels squeaking against concrete, my heart rattling with something new. That night I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling fan, spinning slow and hypnotic, a metronome, to memories I'd tried to bury. My wife died 10 winters ago. The house has been quiet since. The silence became a comfort until it wasn't. Until it let things like that cop's laughter echo longer than it should. But that young woman's words kept ringing too. You shouldn't let them do this. Maybe she was right. Maybe I'd been quiet too long. Maybe it was time someone stood, even if that someone had no legs left to stand on. And maybe I wasn't as alone as I thought. That was the beginning of the end for Officer Brent Dalton. He just didn't know it yet. And neither did I. It had been 3 days since Officer Dalton dumped water on me. 3 days since I sat soaked and silent in the middle of Bridgeport Square. 3 days since that young woman, her name I'd later learn was Alana Torres, handed me back my dignity without asking for anything in return. I hadn't left my apartment since. My wheelchair sat by the window facing out toward the cracked courtyard, where neighborhood kids sometimes played basketball with a rim that leaned like it was tired of trying. I hadn't rolled outside to watch them like I used to. I didn't wave at Miss Hargrove 2 doors down or listen to the noon bells of the old AME church. I just sat, thinking, remembering, bleeding inside without a visible wound. I didn't ask for a war. I never wanted one. But wars don't care what you want. They find you. They break into your home when no one's watching, sit across from you in the dark, and whisper things you've tried to forget. That's what this felt like. A slow invasion. Not with guns and tanks, but with humiliation, silence, and power in a badge. The 4th day came with a knock. I ignored it at first, but then came a voice, soft, persistent. "Mr. Brooks." "It's me, Alana. I brought something." I opened the door. She stood there with a folder, eyes brighter than I remembered. "It's the footage. I uploaded it everywhere. TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. It's already over 100,000 views. But there's more." She stepped inside without waiting for an invite. That told me she wasn't here to ask. She was here to fight. And, strangely, I welcomed it. She pulled out her laptop and pressed play. There it was, Dalton's sneer. The water bottle. My face contorting in silent protest as the cold poured over my head. His words. "Next time, try a sidewalk, not a monument, old man." But that wasn't what hit hardest. What hit hardest were the comments. This is America in 2025. Still treating our black elders like trash. Veteran or not, they don't care unless you're in uniform and white. Who is this man? Let's help him. My name. My story. My life. Suddenly, people wanted to know. But not everyone was supportive. Alana showed me the hate, too. The trolls. The ones saying I was faking it. That my wheelchair was a prop. That I was a race-baiting freeloader looking for 15 minutes of pity. That stung. I'd spent my life working 2, sometimes 3 jobs to survive. I paid my taxes. I built machines that built this country. And here I was, fighting for the right to sit under a statue and think. Alana turned to me. "Mr. Brooks, I know this is scary, but people are listening. If you speak up, they'll hear you." "I don't want attention," I said, voice coarse. "I think you want justice, and that's louder." I didn't answer, but something cracked in me then. Not broke, cracked. Like a shell that had hardened too long and needed to let light in. That night I opened the closet for the first time in months. I pulled out the old photo of me in uniform, 23 upright eyes, fierce. I placed it on the table. Then I turned to the shoebox underneath the bed. Inside were clippings, letters, a medal I never told anyone I received. Purple Heart. Not from war, but from the accident in the plant. The union fought for it, said it was the least they could do. I stared at that medal. A symbol of pain turned into honor. Maybe that's what this could be too. The next morning, I rolled into the community center. Heads turned. Whispers followed. But I kept going until I reached the mic at the front of the town hall meeting. "I have something to say," I began. Some people recognized me. Others didn't. My name is Leonard Brooks. I served this country. I built its machines. I raised a son here. And 4 days ago, I was assaulted in public by a man who wears a badge meant to protect. He poured water on me not because I was dangerous, but because I was visible. Silence, then murmurs, then phones raised. I didn't ask to be anyone's symbol. But maybe it's time we stop letting silence protect cruelty. When I finished, there was a pause, then applause, then people standing. That's when the twist came. A voice from the back, firm, authority-laced. "Mr. Brooks, I believe you and I need to speak soon." It was Deputy Chief Sandra Colburn. She wasn't known for public appearances. She moved through city politics like smoke, silent, swift, and hard to catch. But now she stood facing me, not as an enemy, but as something else. Ally opponent I didn't yet know, but I saw something in her eyes, calculation, and maybe, just maybe, regret. That's when I realized this wasn't just about me anymore. This was bigger. Something was breaking open in Bridgeport, and for the first time in a long while, I wasn't afraid to see what spilled out. I met Deputy Chief Sandra Colburn the following morning. Not in a courtroom, not in a station house, but in the last place I ever thought a uniformed officer would summon a man like me, the local library. She was already there when I rolled in her navy blue service dress, pressed to perfection, rows of commendations pinned across her chest, like silent declarations of pride and guilt. Her posture was straight-backed, her gaze unflinching, and her voice, when she finally spoke, carried the weight of someone used to command, but unused to doubt. "Mr. Brooks," she nodded curtly. "I've watched that video 12 times now." I didn't reply. I just waited, because silence, when used well, has its own kind of power. She continued. "There are things I can't say. Not yet. But what happened to you wasn't just wrong. It was illegal. And Officer Dalton isn't acting alone." That stopped me. She glanced around the quiet study room, then leaned in. "There's been a pattern. Internal Affairs has flagged Dalton 3 times in the last 2 years. Excessive force, racial profiling, intimidation. But every time the reports vanish before they reach the DA's desk." I narrowed my eyes. "Why?" Her jaw tightened. "Because someone upstairs is protecting him. Someone with more stripes than conscience. And if I go at this alone, I lose my badge. But if the public forces our hand—" "You want me to keep this fire burning," I said. She nodded once. "Yes, I do." That's when I saw it, not just regret in her eyes, but resolve. She wasn't there as a cop. She was there as a woman who had watched rot grow inside her own house, and finally decided to clean it out, even if it meant burning the whole place down. I left the library feeling something new purpose. Alana met me outside with 2 cups of coffee and a bagel wrapped in paper. "You went through with it," she said, handing one to me. "She wants a war," I replied. "And I've already been drafted." Together, we started building something. It wasn't just a protest, it was a campaign. Alana set up a GoFundMe to support victims of abuse from Officer Dalton. Within 2 days, it hit $10,000, then 20, then 50. People started coming forward. An elderly Latina woman who'd been shoved for jaywalking a teenage boy with autism harassed during a traffic stop. even a former officer who quit because he couldn't stomach what he saw inside the precinct. Bridgeport was waking up, but so was Dalton. 2 nights later, I heard the knock. Not gentle, not curious, demanding. 3 slams. I rolled to the door, but didn't open it. A voice barked from the other side. "We know what you're doing, Brooks. You better stop before someone gets hurt." Alana, staying in the spare room that night, came out clutching her phone. We called the police. They didn't come. The next morning, someone had spray-painted a slur on my apartment door. Red. Ugly. Furious. But instead of washing it off, I left it there and filmed a video beside it. "This is what happens when you speak up," I said to the camera. "They don't fight your words. They fight your presence. But I'm not going anywhere." The video hit 1 million views by sundown. CNN called. So did local news. Suddenly, I was giving interviews in my living room, wearing my old Army jacket medals on my lap, telling the world how a man who gave everything was repaid with water silence and threats. But the real twist came when we discovered the footage Alana's phone had kept rolling long after I'd thought she stopped recording that day. She captured more than just Dalton's cruelty. She caught a Second Officer 1 standing nearby watching, not stopping it, not flinching, just smirking. Officer Ray Mullins. And when we zoomed in, we saw something on his hip, what looked like a body cam. Turned off. I sent it to Sandra. 10 minutes later, she replied, "Meet me at City Hall. Bring Alana and be ready." City Hall was packed that evening. The mayor tried to keep it closed door, but Sandra used her influence to make it a public forum. There were cameras, reporters, a growing line of angry citizens stretching down the marble steps. I took the mic. "My name is Leonard Brooks. I served, I worked, I survived, and I've been quiet for a long, long time. But I won't be quiet now." I played the video, unedited, raw. The crowd gasped when they saw Mullins in the corner, arms crossed, mouth curled in sick amusement. Then Sandra stood. "As Deputy Chief, I hereby request an emergency suspension of Officer Dalton and Officer Mullins, pending formal investigation by an external civilian oversight board." Silence. Then someone clapped. Then everyone did. Dalton wasn't there that night, but he was watching, and I knew in that moment that the tide had turned. He could hide behind the badge a little longer, but not forever, because Bridgeport had seen too much now, because this old man wasn't backing down, and because for the first time in decades, I wasn't standing alone. The morning after the City Hall hearing, I opened my door to find 2 things waiting: a bouquet of flowers from someone, anonymous lilies, vibrant and defiant, and a rock wrapped in newspaper sitting beside it like a bitter reminder that not everyone was cheering. The paper had a word scrawled across it in all caps, black marker, traitor. I didn't flinch. I didn't pick it up. I just rolled past it, the wheels of my chair rattling like bones across the cracked concrete. Because by now I understood what fear really was. It wasn't threats in the night or slurs on your door. It was silence, complicity, that awful dead space where no one speaks when truth is begging to be heard. Bridgeport was no longer silent. The footage had spread beyond our sleepy town, reaching journalists in D.C. veterans organizations, civil rights groups. Even a state senator tweeted, "Is this how we treat our veterans in Connecticut?" And beneath her post was my face, wet, trembling, humiliated next to a bold headline. "Disabled Black Veteran Assaulted by Officer. Video Goes Viral." I should have felt powerful, vindicated. But something about it made my stomach turn. Maybe because I never wanted to be a symbol. I didn't want to be the old man crying in a wheelchair for the world to pity. I wanted to be heard for my mind, not remembered for my pain. That night, Alana and I hosted a community meeting at the old high school gym. Word had spread fast. More than 300 people showed up, black, white, brown, young, old veterans in ball caps, teenagers in hoodies. Some stood. Some sat on the floor. But all of them watched as I wheeled up to the stage beneath the faded scoreboard that still flickered the numbers of a long-lost game. I'm not here because I hate cops. I began, voice steady, echoing through the bleachers. I'm here because some of them forgot who they swore to protect. Because the badge became a weapon and the law became a costume. And because if they can do this to me, a veteran, what do you think they'll do to the next child who speaks up? The room fell so still, I swear, I heard someone whisper, "Amen." That's when Sandra arrived. She strode in without fanfare in plain clothes. Now, no badge, no belt. Just resolve. She took the mic beside me, her voice sharper than I'd ever heard it. We have launched a full investigation into Officer Brent Dalton and Officer Ray Mullins, she announced. But we've hit resistance. From inside. From above. She looked directly into the camera Alana had set up. There is corruption inside this department, and I won't let it bury another voice. The crowd erupted. Cheers. Applause. A chant began. Justice for Brooks. Justice for Brooks. But I saw something in Sandra's eyes, something she hadn't said yet. Backstage, she pulled me aside. "There's something you need to see," she whispered. "And it doesn't leave this room." She handed me a manila folder. Inside were sealed complaints, officer evaluations, and something far more disturbing, a body cam transcript from another incident involving Dalton. This time, it was a black teenager, 14 years old, name redacted, slammed against a patrol car for loitering. The tape was erased. But the audio remained. The boy cried out, "I didn't do anything." Dalton laughed and said, "You don't have to." I clenched the paper so hard it crumpled. Sandra added, "That boy. He hung himself 2 months later." My blood ran cold. "This is what silence costs," I said. Sandra nodded. "This is what we expose. Together." But that same night, Dalton made his move. Around midnight, my power went out. My heater shut down. My building, already cold from a leaking roof, turned into an icebox. Then came the knock again, 3 bangs. No words this time. Just pressure. A message. When I checked the hallway through the peephole, I saw a figure walking away in a hoodie, hands in pockets. Then I saw the flicker my car outside. On fire. Alana screamed. We called the fire department. They came. Too late to save the old sedan, but not too late for the cameras to catch it. The next morning, every major network ran with the headline, "Veteran's car torched in retaliation. Who's protecting Bridgeport's badge?" Dalton denied involvement. Said he was on leave during the incident. But Sandra pulled his GPS logs. He'd been within 4 blocks of my building at the exact time. Still, without visual confirmation, the department stalled. That's when I realized something brutal. They were hoping I'd back down. They were hoping I'd be scared. They didn't realize men like me don't fear flames. We've been forged in them. The next week, we filed a civil suit against the city. Not just for me, but for the boy who screamed, for the woman who was shoved, for the silent ones whose stories never made it past the badge. The city responded by placing Dalton and Mullins on administrative leave. But that wasn't enough. We demanded trial, exposure, reform, and Sandra, she stepped down from her post and announced she would testify on our behalf. That, right there, was the crack in the badge. the crack in the wall that had protected monsters in uniform for decades. Because when someone from the inside steps out into the light, there's no more place to hide, and Bridgeport, God help it, was about to see everything. The courthouse steps looked taller than I remembered. Maybe because the last time I'd been there decades ago I had legs that could climb them. Now I watched from the base as Alana and a team of volunteers pinned posters across the railings, images of the boy Dalton had brutalized the woman he shoved the burnt husk of my sedan. Each photo carried the same caption in bold red, "W choose next." As the crowd swelled around me, hundreds of Bridgeport residents, reporters, veterans, even strangers from other states, I saw something beautiful: unity. People who never looked at each other twice in the grocery store now stood shoulder to shoulder, holding signs that read, "I stand with Brooks, end qualified, silence and justice needs wheels." Inside the courtroom pulsed with heat and tension. The gallery was full. Alana sat beside me, camera in hand. Across the aisle, Dalton stood flanked by lawyers' expensive suits, smug faces. Mullins, too, chewing gum like this was some high school suspension hearing. And then Sandra entered. No longer in uniform, but her presence was sharper than any badge. She was called to the stand first. The air changed as she took the oath and adjusted the microphone. "I served in the Bridgeport Police Department for 22 years, she began. "And in the last 5, I watched the soul of our station rot from the inside out." The courtroom stilled. Internal reports against Officer Dalton were suppressed, she said, voice unwavering. Body cam footage vanished. Victims were ignored. Every time I pushed back, I was warned, "This isn't your fight." But the truth is, it's everyone's fight. Dalton's attorney jumped up. "Objection, unfounded claims." The judge waved him down. "You'll get your turn," Sandra continued. "I witnessed Officer Mullins deactivate his body cam before Mr. Brooks was assaulted. That's a direct violation of department protocol." Then came the twist. She opened her briefcase and pulled out a flash drive. "This contains security footage from a pawn shop across the square. The angle catches what Dalton thought no one would see." The prosecutor plugged it in. The screen in the courtroom flickered to life. We saw it clear as daylight. Dalton walking up to me, smiling, holding the water bottle. Then came the act. The slur, the laugh, and in the far corner, Mullins glancing at his camera, then tapping it off. No audio, but no doubt. The courtroom gasped. Even the judge shifted. Dalton's lawyer paled. I took the stand next. My hands trembled on the armrests, but my voice was iron. "I didn't ask for this fight," I said. "But when a man pours water on your head like your filth, and no one stops him, something inside you says, 'No more.' That was the day I stopped surviving. That was the day I started living again. The defense tried to paint me as a radical. A media seeker even accused Alana of manipulating the narrative for clicks. But every time they spoke, the jury shifted away from them, because no amount of spin could erase what they'd seen, what everyone had seen. By the end of the 3rd day, the city settled. Dalton and Mullins were officially terminated. Bridgeport agreed to pay reparations to each verified victim. A civilian oversight board was formed. But more than that, Dalton was arrested, charged with assault, destruction of public evidence, and obstruction of justice. When they placed the cuffs on him, he didn't sneer. He looked hollow, exposed, like the uniform had been holding his soul together. Mullins, he ran, literally disappeared from Bridgeport. Some say he fled the state. I don't care, because justice doesn't need everyone punished. It needs someone held accountable. As I wheeled out of that courthouse, the crowd erupted. Not in violence, in applause. People chanting my name. But I raised my hand not in pride, but in reminder. This isn't about me, I said through the mic Alana handed me. It's about the next person. The silent one, the scared one, the kid in the hoodie, the grandma at the bus stop, the homeless vet no one notices. Speak for them. Fight for them. Because the day you look away is the day they fall. Reporters swarmed me, asked how I felt. I gave them one word: ready, because there was more to do. Justice had cracked the wall. Now it was time to tear it down. The news ran my story for weeks. Disabled veteran brings down corrupt officers. Bridgeport reckons with its badge. Justice rolls forward in a wheelchair. They called me a hero, a symbol, a spark. But I wasn't any of those things. I was a man who had been tired for too long, and now I was wide awake. What happened next wasn't scripted. It wasn't planned in some boardroom or PR office. It happened because people decided to stop looking away. Alana helped me launch the Brooks Initiative, a community-driven watchdog group. Not for revenge, for truth, for dignity, for stories that had been buried beneath paperwork and excuses. We partnered with local students, lawyers, and activists, held at town halls in churches, coffee shops, and backyards. We collected testimonies, listened to stories of those too afraid to speak until now. And every time a hand went up to say, "Me too," something cracked in this city that no badge could seal again. We exposed 5 more officers with questionable records. 2 retired before charges could be filed. 1 was demoted, the others suspended pending investigation. But we didn't stop there. Alana's footage was used to push a bill in the state legislature, the Brooks Act. It proposed mandatory third-party audits of body cam footage, protected whistleblower rights within police departments, and eliminated the internal-only disciplinary process for officers accused of abuse. The night it passed, the State House Sandra Colburn sat beside me on the Capitol lawn, watching the vote through a live stream, her eyes wet with something she rarely showed. "I should have done this years ago," she whispered. "You're doing it now," I said. "That's what counts." But even as we moved forward, the shadows kept trying to pull us back. 2 months after the trial, someone torched our community office. The fire department said it was electrical, but we found the gas can behind the alley. We found the initials scratched into the brick BD. Brent Dalton, out on bail, bitter, dangerous. I should have been afraid, but I wasn't, because something had changed. This wasn't just my fight anymore. It belonged to Bridgeport. People rebuilt the office with their own hands. Carpenters showed up. Artists repainted the walls. Children made signs. "Justice lives here," hung above the door in bold black letters by noon the next day. We held a vigil that night. Hundreds came. Some prayed. Some cried. All stood. I was asked to speak, and for the first time I said the words I had carried for decades but never dared to speak aloud. I was taught that strength is silence, that dignity is swallowing pain, that pride is never asking for help. But they were wrong. Strength is standing. Dignity is truth. And pride is refusing to let shame define you. The crowd went quiet. Then someone clapped. Then everyone. Then they lifted candles high into the night. And in that light I saw faces I'd never seen before. Teachers, bus drivers, kids from my building, even Marcus. My son. I hadn't seen him in 6 years. He stood at the back, older, heavier, his hair cut short like mine used to be. He didn't say a word, just raised his candle and nodded. That was enough. I cried that night. Not from grief, from something else, hope. But just as I thought the battle had crested, the real twist struck. A whistleblower from City Hall reached out to Alana anonymously. Sent her documents proving that Dalton's record, his offenses, his internal complaints had been scrubbed clean repeatedly. By someone high up. The name, Councilman Patrick Raymer. The same man who publicly condemned the police violence. The same man who visited me in the hospital after the car fire with flowers and TV cameras. We confronted him. He denied everything. So we published the documents, and the city exploded. Protests erupted at City Hall. A recall vote was initiated. Within days, more emails leaked showing Councilman Raymer coordinated with Dalton to suppress footage, silence victims, and reward loyalty with promotions. That was the final match. Dalton was rearrested, this time no bail. Raymer resigned under pressure, escorted from the chamber to chance of shame. Bridgeport had seen the rot. Now it demanded rebirth. I didn't cheer, I didn't smile. I just went home and sat on my porch, watching the street, watching the city breathe, watching a place once broken start to bend toward something better. The fire they started to silence me had become the fire that forged a new truth. And I was just the first flame. Morning sunlight spilled through my window, like gold spilled from heaven, soft, warm, forgiving. I sat at the edge of the porch, wrapped in my old army jacket, coffee balanced on the tray beside me, as the sounds of Bridgeport stirred to life. Children's laughter echoed from the basketball court. Church bells chimed faintly in the distance. Wind rustled the flags that lined the neighborhood, flags of pride, of remembrance, of unity. Not a single one had been ripped down or defaced in weeks. That's how I knew something had truly changed. It had been 4 months since Dalton was sentenced to 7 years without parole. 5 months since Councilman Raymer was indicted on charges of conspiracy and obstruction. 6 months since Sandra handed me the flash drive that shattered everything and built something stronger in its place. And every single day since I had woken not just to light but to purpose. The Brooks Initiative had expanded to cities I'd never stepped foot in: Trenton, Milwaukee, Tulsa. Alana was traveling now, speaking at universities, meeting with lawmakers. They called her the firebrand of Bridgeport. She hated the name. I loved it. We still talked every day, still argued over headlines and hashtags, but she had become more than a friend. She was the daughter the city had needed, and the daughter I never had. Sandra had started over teaching criminal justice reform at the community college, mentoring cadets with a promise. You carry the badge, or you carry the burden. Never both. As for me, I had healed not in the way most people think. My legs still didn't move. My back still ached every night. But my heart. It had grown legs again. I'd rolled through fire and found my spine. 1 week after Dalton's sentencing, something unexpected happened. I was invited to speak at the state capitol. They called it Veterans for Justice Day. A new holiday, signed into law quietly, humbly, with a single ceremony and no fanfare. The bill that created it, named after me. I sat at the podium, blinking beneath the blinding lights, and looked out over a crowd I never thought I'd live to see: Republicans and Democrats sitting side by side, black and white young, and old veterans in wheelchairs, activists in jeans. And when I spoke, I didn't speak about Dalton. I didn't speak about injustice or anger or pain. I spoke about my porch. I spoke about that simple morning when I looked outside and saw peace. Peace, I told them, isn't the absence of noise. It's the presence of dignity. It's the quiet knowing that if you speak, someone will listen, that if you fall, someone will stand beside you. Peace doesn't come from law. It comes from courage, from truth, from rising when the world wants you silent. The applause that followed didn't feel like thunder. It felt like rain, soft, cleansing, needed. When I came back to Bridgeport, Marcus was waiting on the porch. This time he wasn't just visiting. He carried boxes. Moving in. I got a job at the VA hospital, he said, eyes damp. I want to be around. I want to rebuild. I didn't say anything. I just pulled him into a hug that felt like 30 years folding in on themselves. Later that week, we held a block party, not to celebrate victory, but to reclaim space. Children danced. Music played. Someone made barbecue ribs so good, I thought about forgiving them for overcooking the corn. Alana flew in just for it. Sandra gave a toast. And I watched. I breathed. Near the end, a little girl tapped my arm. Her name was Jaya. She couldn't have been more than 6. Are you the man in the video? She asked. I smiled. Which one? The one where the bad man dumped water on you. I nodded slowly. She leaned in close. You looked sad, but then you looked brave. I swallowed hard. Sometimes you have to be both. She handed me a crayon drawing. It was me, big smile, huge wheels surrounded by hearts and stars. I pinned it up in the community center the next day, right above the old headline. Disabled, black man insulted by cop who dumps water on him. Community rises up in anger. That title had once defined me. Now it was just a beginning. Because that's the thing about pain. It doesn't have to end you. It can name you, shape you, even save you. And if you're brave enough, it can build a bridge to truth, a bridge to hope, a bridge to home. This wasn't just a story about a disabled black man who was humiliated by a cop. It was about what happens when one voice refuses to stay silent. It was about how truth, even when spoken from a wheelchair, can shake the walls of power. I didn't set out to be a hero. I only wanted dignity. But sometimes life chooses you to carry the fire so others can walk through the darkness. The meaning of life, I've come to believe, isn't in what you endure, but in what you rise for. And when we rise for each other, that's when change becomes unstoppable. If this story moved you, if you believe in justice, dignity, and standing for those who can't, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Comment below. What does justice mean to you? Have you ever experienced silent injustice? Share this story because somewhere out there, someone still believes they're alone. Let them know they're not. Your voice matters. Together we rise.